Well, this past week, we issued the new Agenda 21 video, Agenda 21, How Will It Affect You? If you haven't seen it yet, you're in store for a very pleasant experience. It does a very good job of explaining Agenda 21 to a neophyte. Part of the Agenda 21 video has a spot in there where it talks about the Red Chinese, the Communist Chinese, with their one-child policy. Now, a lot of people can't believe that that sort of thing exists. We put that in there to show that the environmental movement is actually going towards a one-child policy or less around the world, including the United States. And one of the things that has occurred in this past week is this article in USA Today, the MEC paper, if you will, and the title is Forced Abortion Ignites Online Outrage. And the interesting thing is that it is about a woman who was forced to have an abortion because it was her second child. She wasn't allowed to do that. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons, but primarily because Communist China is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. As such, they have veto power over everything the United Nations does. In addition to that, they have a great deal of influence within the United Nations with satellite countries that they work with, countries that they're financing in South America and the Caribbean and the South Pacific and everything else. With the money that we spend at our stores, they take that money from all those Chinese imports and buy influence around the world. So China has a lot of influence in the United Nations. And so when you look at their one-child policy, it becomes a bit disconcerting. Let me read a few pieces out of this article to you. A pregnant woman dragged to a hospital by authorities and forced to have an abortion has enraged Chinese and sparked an online flurry of debate over whether it's time to end China's draconian one-child family planning policy. The scandal erupted when photos were posted online showing Mother Fang laying in a hospital bed with the corpse of her daughter. Fang, who was in her 7th month of pregnancy, said she was dragged into a vehicle, her head covered and her legs beaten, then taken to a hospital for injections that killed and induced delivery of her unborn child. Fang said she was forced to have an abortion because she could not pay the $6,300 fine for a second child. In years past, Fang's forced abortion would have happened with little public reaction, but internet-based social media allows individual Chinese to take their stories directly to the people and are forcing the government to address complaints. A preliminary investigation after all of this to-do amongst the population, a preliminary investigation was conducted by the government, after which the government admitted Thursday that it was wrong. Now listen to why it was wrong. The late-term abortion was a serious violation of national policies. It damaged the image of family planning work, and caused extremely harmful social impact. Well, it never mentions the fact they murdered the kid. It was wrong because somehow or another it was ruining the image of the family planning policy of the national government. That's the kind of thinking that they have in communist countries. I'm surprised it's even gone as far as it has, considering the kinds of control that they have. There are people who can have 2 families or 2 children in communist China. They just happen to be members of the Communist Party. Everybody else may or may not be allowed to have a child. Just because they're married doesn't mean that they can actually have one because they need a birth permit. And by the way, they are not allowed to get married without the permission of the communist apparatus either. And men are forbidden from being married in China before the age, I think it is, of 25. So we have a real serious situation when this kind of country and system has this kind of influence on the United Nations and thereby on Agenda 21 and into the United States as a result. Another thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks is concern over the so-called merger of Rothschild and Rockefeller in the United States. And here in the Financial Times, this is Rothschild deal charts U.S. shift. Well, really, there is no real shift. You know, the Rothschilds have been involved in financing since 1800. There is a myth that exists out there that the Rothschilds run a worldwide conspiracy. Well, the conspiracy that they supposedly run wouldn't allow people into it that were members of the Jewish faith or race until well into the 1800s. So the idea that the Rothschilds started it is a bit ridiculous. They even used to have the tactic of having individuals, Germanics, Anglo-Saxons, and who were agents of this conspiracy, adapt aliases using Jewish names so that people would look at the Jewish people as the problem instead of where the real problem emanated from. But in regard to Rothschild and Rockefeller getting together, this is nothing new. Rothschild has been in the United States since they sent an agent here by the name of August Belmont. Now, I would invite you to go to Wikipedia online and look that man's name up, August Belmont. He was a very big financier and a huge influence in politics before the Civil War. And so their agent, August Belmont, was involved in investing in the United States way long time ago. It's not that they're being introduced into the United States now. And as far as Rockefeller cooperating with these European banks and companies and everything else, that's been going on since the 20s and 30s. In fact, Rockefeller, one of the most notorious things in that regard was their work with I.G. Farben and others that helped Hitler come to power and produce the industry that produced the German war machine. Rockefellers were all involved in that sort of thing. So this is nothing new, although a lot of people are paying attention to it as if it is. It's the same old problem we've always dealt with central banks and people that have more money than they know what to do with. Then they want to not buy things anymore, they want to run things. And that is what makes these people dangerous. But at any rate, those are the things that I did want to bring to your attention this week. Until next week, we'll see you then.